And our topic for this morning is a continuation of our monthly theme, which is let us help you do life. Let us help you do this life, human life, lowercase l, this life that has its ups and downs, its around and abouts, its joys and upsets, its fears and its excitement and and everything in between. This life, let us help you do this life with greater, more consistent joy, calm, peace, abundance, flow, love, happiness, community, all of those things. Let us help you do that by connecting with life, capital L. Life, the source and substance of all things. Life, capital L, the divine wisdom and intelligence that is back of, as our founder Ernest Holmes would say, or behind, at the center, at the core of everything. The creative force, life, the creative force in the universe. Life, this thing we call God. Let us help you do lowercase life by connecting with uppercase life. That's our theme for this month. And we are using Greg Braden's just amazing book, not in print, we discovered not in print, Secrets of the Lost Mode of Prayer. We're using this book to help us do life and looking at every single Sunday some real life issues and pulling out one of his ideas, as there are 5 secrets of the lost mode of prayer, pulling out one of those 5 and exploring them. So today we're going to explore the lost mode of prayer, number 3. But before we do that, I always like to back up a little bit because I know we have people here this morning who haven't been here the last couple of weeks necessarily. And it's always a good thing to review anyway, even if we were here, because all of these build on each other and they're related. So it's nice to make sure we have a good solid foundation under us of where we've been. So who knows? And I made a promise last week that I realize now because, whoa, what happened to this week? I know, I promised you I'd have chocolate this week. And there, because as soon as I looked at you, Tim, I went, oh, he's sitting there right now. He's waiting. I see we'll have I'm in trouble now. I am in deep trouble now. If you buy me a bag, I'll have it here, but you got to hide it because I don't want to eat it. That's the thing, right? You got to hide it somewhere. Anyway, so there's only my deep reward of love and accolades if you answer these questions. There is no chocolate, so if you need to leave now, go ahead. I understand. So who can tell me what the first secret of the lost mode of prayer, according to Greg Braden, is? The first secret. What is it? And what about it, though? Stretch that out. Feeling is the prayer. Those are his words. Feeling, you're right. You guys who said feelings, you're all correct about that. Feeling is the prayer. Feeling as if whatever it is that we are praying for, to have experience of, whatever it might be, that when we move into the feeling of it already being done, that's when we create the experience of it already being done. And Greg gave the great example, and I gave the whole story of the first Sunday of the month about praying rain, not praying for rain. And when we're wanting greater abundance, we pray abundance, not pray for abundance. We want healing in our body. We pray healing, not for healing. The difference being when we're praying for something, where are we coming from in our consciousness, in our belief? We're coming from, I don't have it. I need to pray for it because I don't have it. And so when we pray for anything, we empower what we don't have. But when we pray it, when we just pray into it as knowing it's already there and done and feeling it in our body, mind, and heart, then we see it in the world of form. Now, and I said this last week, I'll say it again. While this may be a secret, according to Greg Braden's book, and it may be a secret for a lot of the world, it is certainly not a secret for us. Those of us in this teaching, in religious science, or in any new thought belief system, we know that feeling is a hugely powerful creative energy and force. Our founder, Ernest Holmes, wrote, "The words we speak, the ideas we declare, the thoughts we desire to become things must be vitally known and experienced in every corner of our mind and be vibrantly felt within every part of our being." There it is. So we know this. We know it. Whether we practice it is a whole nother story. But that the week that we explored this secret, we did have a practice of moving into that, and that's a practice I hope and pray that you continue. Then last week we looked at secret 2. All right, here again, no chocolate, but deep accolade and praise for anyone who can tell me what is secret number 2 that we explored last Sunday.
Hurt is the vehicle, and wisdom is the gift.
Oh, Lois, you're so good. Not only did you give it to us, you gave it to me in the way I reworded it, not even in the way that Greg Braden worded it. So rock on, double stars, 2 pieces of chocolate for you if I had it. Right, so in case you didn't hear her, hurt is the vehicle, but wisdom is the gift. And the whole idea behind this is, and it takes feeling, moving this feeling to another place of needing, that we do have deep feelings about things, and that we have all had hurt. Every single one of us has had hurt of some kind in our lives. And what we do with it is what matters. And if we allow it, there is always a gift in it. Always. And the gift is wisdom. There's a deeper wisdom within the hurt. Ernest Holmes wrote, "Let us be willing and glad to turn from all that hurts to the great light. And the Spirit, because of its nature of wholeness, is ever ready to take us in its embrace and make us whole again." Contained in the great light that he refers to in that quote is wisdom. Absolutely, there is wisdom in that great light. And last week, we did an exercise that we learned from Greg Braden when he was here a week ago to create a coherence between our heart and our head, and to find the wisdom from our hearts. We strengthen this journey. Neurologically, we strengthen this journey. If you weren't here to have that experience, jump online and listen to the talk or watch it or pull up your, what's that thing called? Podcast. Thank you, podcast. Tell how technically savvy I am. We do podcasts now. So in some way, listen to that in part of last week's talk and get that exercise that we did. Powerful, powerful exercise. Today, we're at the third mode of prayer. The third secret, if you will, of the lost mode of prayer. Before I tell you what that secret is, I need to set it up a bit. So this mode of prayer we're going to apply to a very, very, very precise and very specific real-life topic. And the topic is one that was requested when in January I did a survey of what would you like to talk about this year? What are things on your mind? What do you want to hear about? And this was a question asked. And so who wrote this? And I know who it happens to be. I know that. And there she is right there, but I won't say Susan Peacock. I won't say her name. I won't say that, but asked, how do I stay calm and centered? How do I stay in spirit? How do I stay, in this election year? What a good question, right? Yeah, whenever I turn the TV on, whenever I go to the gym and I hear, how do I stay centered in all of the brouhaha that has been going on and will only get more engaged and more involved over the next 6 months? How do I stay centered and source? So, Susan, this talk is for you today. So I hope the rest of you enjoy it and benefit from it, but this is for Susan because she asked. I actually had an email from someone who watched online this morning, first service, and said, "Oh my gosh, thank you so much for today. I didn't even realize what was going on inside of me until you brought it up around the election, and now I have some tools to use to change it." So I know this is applicable to more than just you, Susan, but this one's for you today. So we're going to take the third secret of the lost mode of prayer and apply it, and it can apply in all areas of our lives, but we're going to specifically apply it this morning to how do we show up around this upcoming presidential election, and how can we face all this ever-increasing frenetic experience we're going to have over the next 6 months as we get closer and closer to November. So to answer that question, I want to go on a little exploration first. I need to lay a little groundwork first that may not at first seem even remotely related, but I promise it is. So are you willing to go with me on that? Yes. Okay, good. Then here we go. Greg Braden, in his book, Secrets of the Lost Mode of Prayer, writes this. There's a power that lives in the space between. That subtle instant when something ends and what follows has yet to begin. From the birth and death of galaxies to the beginning and ending of careers and relationships, and even in the simplicity of breathing in and out, creation is the story of beginnings and endings, cycles that start and stop, expand and contract, live and die. Regardless of the scale between the ending and the beginning, there exists a moment in time when neither has fully happened. That moment is where magic and miracles come from. In the instant of between, all possibilities exist, and none have yet been chosen. From this place, we're given the power to heal our bodies, change our lives, and bring peace to the world. All events originate from this powerful, magical moment. Whew, that's a lot. So let's explore it a little bit. Particularly the line that says, regardless of the scale, meaning the distance or the magnitude of the event, regardless of the scale, between the end and the beginning, there exists a moment in time when neither one has fully happened. So there is a neutral moment where nothing yet has been placed, as we would say in religious science, into the law. The law is simply the process by which God creates, and therefore we create. It's the neutral field that simply receives what gets put in it and then manifests and creates. But there's a moment where nothing has been put in the law. It's just neutral. The law is standing ready. It's standing ready to create, but nothing yet has been placed in it. It's that neutral moment where we could either go left or right, and I don't mean that politically, I just mean that figuratively, all right? just figuratively. We can go up or down, we can go horizontally or vertically. There's a moment where we have choice, where nothing has happened yet. And in that moment is where infinite possibilities exist. Infinite possibilities exist in that moment in between. So we could look at this time right now, this season, this political season of the in-between time, where the current presidency hasn't quite ended yet, but we don't know who the new president will be. So we're in a moment. We are in the in-between moment. Remember, Braden said, doesn't matter what the scale, doesn't even matter how long that moment is, it's always there. So we're in it. We're in the moment. And so we have an opportunity to make a difference in what occurs. Now, I get that in this moment that we have, which now we're going to say is about 6 months from today-ish, there's a lot of noise and activity and blustering and brouhaha and name-calling and all sorts of emotions. There's all sorts of stuff going on in this moment. And actually, what goes on in this moment, what goes on for us in this moment, is critically important. Braden writes, this is this place between, where feelings and prayers become the blueprint of life. The key is that our emotional state during prayer determines the kind of blueprint we create. Knowing that the field is a reflection of our inner beliefs, we must find a way to clear our hurt and anger before we pray. If we think about this, it makes perfect sense. After all, how could we expect the mind of God to reflect healing and peace if we are feeling fear and hurt? Ernest Holmes said pretty much the same thing in the textbook, in the Science of Mind that I read from this morning, when he wrote, "The God of love cannot hear the prayers of the one who fails to love." Wow, that's a powerful statement. So let's apply this then today to everything that's going to happen in the next 6 months up until Election Day. I'd like to think that we, sitting in this room, are awake, conscious, right? Spiritually minded people. Are you with me on that? Yes. Okay, well, 5 of you are good. I'm glad 5 of you are awake and spiritually conscious, right? Where are the rest of you? What's going on with the rest of you back there? Are we awake, conscious, and spiritually aware people? Yes. Thank you. Glad. So how we, those of us who claim to be who we are, how we experience these next 6 months is going to be critically important. And now I just posed the rhetorical question that won't be rhetorical in a minute. I'm going to ask, how many of us have already, and it hasn't really even started yet, but have already experienced frustration, judgment, fear, criticism, upset. Yeah? There we go. Right. We have. We all have. So we just have to acknowledge that. Now, I do want to I want to pause for a second and go off on a tiny little aside to make something really abundantly clear for this morning and for the next 6 months as they unfold. I would never stand up here and suggest any particular candidate, because that's not my job. It's your job to know who the right person to vote for you. Only you can know that. Of course, I have my opinion, of course. And I will vote my consciousness and my opinion. But I am not up here to say anyone is better than another, anyone is wrong, anyone is right. I am not here to say that. So if I ever make a statement in the next 6 months that you might think is leaning toward one candidate or another, know that it is not. It is simply to bring us to a different awareness, okay? And particularly today. I love the idea that Science of Mind says that we do not tell you how to think, but Science of Mind teaches us how to think, right? It doesn't tell us what to think it doesn't tell us what to think, but it teaches us how to think. So that's what I want to do here this morning. I'm not going to tell you who you should vote for, shouldn't vote for, who your candidate should be or isn't. I can't say that. But I will offer you a way to approach this whole thing. So you got that? Are we clear about that? Okay, so one more time I'm going to say that I suspect there are those of us out there, me most definitely included, who have in the past, months already, since things have happened already, and will continue to feel frustration, irritation, upset, anger, judgment, condemning, disturbed, etc., etc., etc. I definitely would be there. So I just want to know, has anyone else felt that way? Just raise your hand if you have. I just want to see. Okay, good. So you don't leave me standing up here all by myself. I appreciate that. And you've given me a chance to tell a story that I wanted to tell. So thank you for raising your hand. So there's this minister who, look at that. They're already like, oh, here it comes. There was this minister who was given a hell, fire, and brimstone, fiery message on the wages of sin, fiery message on the wages of sin. And when he finished giving the message and he decided that he would just ask, now, who believes that they are destined for paradise when they die? If you believe you are destined for paradise after you leave this earth plane, stand up and proclaim it. Most of the congregation, not all, but most of the congregation stood up. And he's like, hallelujah, brothers and sisters, that's good. Has them sit down. And then he says, now the rest of you didn't stand up. So what I'm going to ask now is, those of you, after hearing my sermon today, how many of you think that in fact, because of, your lifestyle and the way you live, that you're bound for hell? If you think you are, stand up. Now, of course, nobody stood up, right? Who's going to stand up in a question like that? Nobody stood up. So there's kind of this awkward silence in the sanctuaries. The minister's just waiting for somebody to stand up. Finally, John Smith sheepishly stands up, looking at the ground, but he stands up and the minister just eyes him knowingly. All right, service is over. John Smith goes through the line, and the preacher says, okay, John, I just got to ask you, brother, what is it? Why is it that you believe that you're destined for hell? And John says, well, preacher, actually, I'm not really worried about my own soul, but I just couldn't stand having you be the only one standing up there by yourself. Thank you, Dave. Thank you. Right. So thank you for not leaving me standing here by myself in feeling at times bothered, disturbed, judgmental, frustrated, angry, condemning about, what has gone on so far with some or another or all, frankly, of the political candidates. But our question is, if we realize that we are in the space in between and that we can impact the ultimate outcome by who we are in the space in between, what are we going to do with that space? How are we going to show up? And what we know instinctively and intuitively, that if we're showing up in that space in between with frustration and condemnation and judgment and all of those feelings, we are probably not going to create what it is that we would like to, right? We know that. So the question is then, what do we do? What do we do? Well, Greg Braden gives us an offering on this, and we're starting to get to what the third secret of the lost mode of prayer is. He writes, to answer this question, meaning, so what do? We once again turn to the wisdom from our past. In the highest orders of the Essene teachings, we are left instructions on how to use the space between to prepare ourselves for prayer. Specifically, they describe how we might prepare our hearts, our minds, and our bodies before the prayer even begins. If it's even for a moment, we're invited to create an experience that temporarily suspends our judgments, our fears, and our hurts. From this neutral state, we may offer our prayer from strength and clarity. I love that. From this neutral state, we may offer our prayer from strength and clarity. This allows us to enter into our sacred dialogue in the mind of God in a state of consciousness that brings the greatest benefit of prayer into our lives. Through words that are both eloquent and simple, the Sufi poet Rumi invites us to join him in this neutral place once we've discovered it within ourselves. He shares his invitation in two brief yet powerful statements. Out beyond the ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I will meet you there. How do we get to this place when life shows us a world that appears to be scary and dangerous? The instructions are precise. The instructions that he says are precise appear in many texts and many sacred scriptures. But the best one, or maybe we should say one of the clearest ones, comes from our master teacher Jesus, who talked to his disciples about how to show up in this world, how to be the most powerful men of God that they could be. And he told them to bless, not curse. He told them again and again, many times in the scripture, Jesus is talking to his disciples and says to bless. He's going on to and says, bless those who curse you, bless those who do harm to you. But we can expand it. It's not just those, it's anyone. We bless. We bless. We bless. Ernest Holmes says, when we constructively praise and creatively bless, life abounds with love, peace, and joy. So let goodness shine forth. Let us learn to see that everyone is an evolving Christ. Let us see that everyone is an evolving Christ. Okay, I'm going to change that up and say, let us see that our politicians are evolving Christ. Okay, breathe that one in, right? There it is. There. Here's our work right here. Here it is. Bada-ding, bada-doong. Let us so live and think that we may retire at night in peace, knowing that no harm can come to the soul, that we may rise in the morning renewed in mind and body with a brighter outlook, a happier expectation, and a clearer joy, looking upon all with love, condemning none, and blessing all. To be clear, blessing does not mean putting our stamp of approval on. Blessing does not mean that we agree or even disagree with anything. It doesn't mean that we encourage or discourage anything. It's an act of love, simply an act of love. One more quote from Braden. Blessing something is the lubricant that frees our hurtful emotions, opening us up to greater healing rather than keeping our emotions stuck and unresolved within the body. Blessing is the key to reaching Rumi's field beyond wrongdoing and right doing. Blessing is the key to accessing the space between. It temporarily suspends any hurt long enough that we can replace it with another feeling. Through the act of blessing, you assume your power to release life's deepest hurts and unresolved feelings. So the third secret of the lost mode of prayer, I believe, is, if not the key, at least a key to living calmly in the eye of the election storm. And put in Greg Braden's words, the third secret is blessing is the release. So next week when I maybe or may not have chocolate to reward you, and I ask you what the third is, blessing is the release. So the question might be on our minds is, so what does it mean to bless? You know, I mean, we all probably have an idea of that, but I want to give you something very specific that could be a definition for blessing and an activity, an action, because it's one thing to just yammer about things. It's another to actually do it. So blessing is seeing the power and the presence of God in another and calling it forth into active manifestation. Let me say it again. Blessing is seeing the power and presence of God in another and or ourselves for that matter, but in this case, in another, and calling it forth into action. Now, when I say calling it forth, I don't mean saying, okay, you're going to behave in a certain way, and I demand you to do that. No. It's just seeing the presence of God and inviting that presence of God to come forth. All right? Does that make sense? Yeah, okay, good. All right, I want to give you an example in case it didn't. I want to give you an example. Now, before I do, I said it doesn't mean that you're outlining any particular way God is going to come forth. That's not your job. Your job is just to send the blessing. And often when we do that, conditions and circumstances do change. That's not part of our job. If it happens, fantastic. If it doesn't happen, fantastic. We change because we do the blessing. But let me give you an example of something that did change because of a blessing. I went to Revelation many years ago, 5 or 6 or 7. Revelation is a week-long conference put on by Agape. You all know who Agape is, and Reverend Dr. Michael Beckwith. So it's a used to be religious science church. Now it's expanded into more expansive new thought. And it's just an amazing spiritual community over in Culver City, California. And so Dr. Michael, the minister of that church, was speaking and telling a story on himself, which I thought was pretty hysterical and very, very relevant to this idea. So Michael and one of his staff ministers from Agape went to a funeral, a memorial service of a friend at a very traditional Christian church. And they were sitting there, and the minister who's giving the memorial service really starts to give a very long, fiery sermon on hell and damnation. I mean, it was a sermon. And Michael sat there, was getting irritated. Angry, as a matter of fact, thinking this is not appropriate for a memorial service. We're supposed to be honoring this man who is deceased. And that's what I came here. I didn't come here to hear that I'm, a sinner and I'm going to go to hell. I didn't come to hear all that. I don't want to hear all that. I want to honor this man. He was getting really mad. And in his head, judgment, condemnation, criticism of the minister who was speaking, right? Just like we can judge and condemn when we hear politicians. So he's like, rah, 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 in his brain. And he finally leans over to his staff minister who is there with him and says something like, I can't believe this, what this preacher is saying. And I'm rah, 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 rah. And his staff minister just kind of looked at him and says, Michael, maybe you ought to be practicing what you preach here. Ooh, we ministers hate to hear that. I just want to tell you, we hate that, and you do it to us all the time. And we just, oh man, it's like busted. I've been busted. Dang it. So Dr. Michael took a breath and, internally went, oh, boy, you're right. I'm not practicing what I preach at all. So he just reoriented his internal position, his internal landscape, and just started sending blessings out to the preacher, seeing the God in him, calling forth the divine wisdom that is in him. That's all. He wasn't outlining in any specific way that would come out, having no expectation that it would be made evident in that moment, but that's what he was doing. And he was kind of in his own little zone, not even listening to what the man was saying, as he's just loving and blessing and surrounding and calling forth God, and finally kind of came back to the moment, and the guy's still just rah, 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 preaching away. But all of a sudden, the preacher stops. It was almost like had a divine download and says, and I just want you to know, the God that is in this man is in the God of all of you. It's the same God that's in all of you. Sorry, I didn't get that quite right. Completely different kind of flavor. And the whole thing, then just the tone of the whole thing changed. We can't guarantee that that will happen every time we send a blessing. But, I had an experience last night, because we can use this more than just in the political arena. I'm going to tell you, I didn't tell first service this, but I had an experience last night. So I worked on this talk yesterday and put it together, and I need to live this too, just like all of us. I need to do this. And so we're going to do a little activity in a minute. But I did that yesterday. Lonnie and I went to see my family last night. I love my family. And we come from very, very, very different spiritual perspectives. Very different. Really different. We usually just don't talk about it. That's kind of the best thing. But I have one particular member of this family that she's kind of new. She's married into the family. And I've always felt like icicles coming from her, and kind of even daggers sometimes. And and it's probably half of it at least is my own perception. Probably like 90% of it is my own perception. But nonetheless, I've always felt uncomfortable around her, and like I am getting judged and not approved of at all. And that's not a really place I like to hang out. And so I don't really like being around her. And I thought, oh gosh, I'm going to go. She's going to be there tonight. Maybe I ought to apply this practice. What? Could have had a V8. I think that would be a good idea. So internally, I am applying the practice we're going to do in just a minute. I'm applying this practice to her. And we arrive, and, she kind of has that same look that I often see from her. It's like, just stay away from me because we do not see eye to eye. I'm like, okay, I will. But I just decided that I'm going to show up in the kindest way I can and, engage her in conversation. And she made a pie, cherry pie, and it was really beautiful, the lattice work on it. And I complimented her. I said, oh, that pie is just gorgeous. And anyway, she just like lightens up. And as talkative as she can be during dinner, looking at me and actually talking to me in a kind, nice way. And then we all went, and several of us, the women, were in the kitchen. Why was that, too? I just realized that the women were in the kitchen, and what was I doing in there? Because I clearly do not belong there in the kitchen. No, but nonetheless, the women were in the kitchen, and I hear her say to my other cousin, Michele said my pie is pretty. That's all that matters. My pie is pretty. She made my day. And I thought, really? And it was a lovely evening. We left going, that was a lovely evening with my family that we are kind of different on many areas. I think it just might have had a little something to do with the way I decided to approach it. Because Lonnie always approaches it with kindness and love. I'm not as sometimes kind as he is. So I'm the one who needs to do this work. So are you ready to do some work with me today on the political front? Okay, I applied it to my second cousin, this last night. It worked. This is a tried and true. Michael tried it. And it's Michael Beckwith. We see it. We're going to do it here. But this is what it's going to look like. I want you to think about a candidate right now that just rubs you the wrong way. Or it could be all of them. It might be all of them. I don't know. Whatever. But I want you to think about some of the qualities that you just really do not like. All right? Really don't like. So give me, I couldn't shut up for service at this. They just wouldn't stop. I'm like, okay, I got the idea, but give me a couple. Give me one quality that you just really, don't tell me the name. I don't want to know who, but just a quality that you're like, oh, dear me, no. What? Stupidity? Okay, hold on. Stop. What is it? Hold on. So I heard big mouth. I think I heard that. And stupidity and arrogance. Okay, so it can apply to any of them, right? Right. So what we're going to do is we're going to take those qualities. So stupidity, all right? There's one. What is the God quality opposite of that? Wisdom, genius, divine intelligence. Okay, that's what we're going to focus on. Big mouth, which is, I guess, kind of abrasive and loud. We're going to say soft and reverent. Nice. Well, huh? I recognize the danger of doing what I'm doing here. I do get it. But what else? What's another one? I couldn't understand the right there. A liar. Okay, liar, not truthful, right? What is the divine quality? Total integrity and honesty, right? Give me one more. Bigotry. Okay, bigot. Inclusive. all-inclusive, accepting, and loving, right? Right. Okay, so this is our activity to do today, but not just today, because a one-shot deal isn't going to do it. This is your practice for the next 6 months. And you're going to have lots of opportunities to practice. Lots of them. Lots of them. All right? I want you to think right now, we just gave some examples. I want you to think of 3 qualities of the candidate that most annoys you. 3 of those negative qualities. Think of 3 of them. And then go to the divine polar opposite. So if you think liar, integrity, and honesty, you think bigot, instead inclusive and loving, right? You think stupid, divine intelligence. So, Terry, come. You got to play with me here, Terry. You got to play with me. What I want you to do is you have those 3 divine qualities, yes? Do you have them? And everything you may be going, I don't even want to play this because I do not think that about that person. This is our work. This is our work in the space in between to call that forth. So what I want you to do is get the image in your mind of whoever you're thinking about. And then when I count to 3, you're going to yell out at the top of your lungs with some conviction the 3 God qualities, not the other ones, the 3 God qualities. This is how we bless. This is how we see the presence of God and call it forth. Okay, you ready? 3, 2, 1, go. All right. So that was not bad. There was a little flatness to all that. I just want to say, like compassion, loving, kind, truthful. That's all right. I said the first time, one time isn't going to cut it. We gotta get through a whole lot of stuff that we've already been thinking for a while. So we're going to try it one more time just to. Yeah, we're going to try it one more time here today to put a little bit more feeling in it. And then this is the practice that I encourage you to engage in every time the candidate or candidates that you disagree with come on the television, on the news, on an ad, because ads are going to start, relatively soon. When you go to the gym, I go to the gym, and I'm like you in the pew. You sit in your spot in the pew, right? You have your spot and you sit in it. Most of you. Some of you like to move around, but some of you are like, oh, I know, there they are. Well, I'm like that at a gym. I always get on the same machine. I always get on the same Stairmaster. And behind me, there's about 5 guys. I would say they're older, but they're probably my age, who are there, right, Linda? Linda knows. The what? The white shirt group, right? You know who they are. Linda works out there too. So they're behind me, and I get to listen the whole time of political conversation. They're just talking and talking and talking. So I'm going to be doing my blessing now when I'm on my. What I'd like to say about that is they're not working hard enough because they can talk. I can't talk. I can't talk when I'm on that thing. Linda walks by, I'm just like, hi. That's all I got. But they're chatting away back there, walking on their treadmill. All right, so you're going to have lots of opportunities to practice this. I want you to anchor it again a little bit deeper. So on the count of 3, you're going to have your candidate in mind. You don't know. And give the 3 qualities, all right? 3, 2, 1. Much better. Much better. Your work, my friends, your mission, should you choose to accept it, and I hope you do, is to practice this blessing technique to help you remain calm and centered in spirit, even in the eye of the election storm as it occurs over the next 6 months. So I want to leave you this morning with a prayer. And we always end in prayer, but this one is a prayer from our founder, Dr. Ernest Holmes. And it is a prayer for our country that Ernest wrote. And he gave a little introductory statement. He wrote, believing in the divine destiny of the United States of America and in the preservation of liberty, security, and self-expression for all, I offer this, my prayer for our country. So let's close our eyes. I know that divine intelligence governs the destiny of the United States of America, directing the thought and the activity of all who guide its affairs. I know that success, prosperity, and happiness are the gifts of freedom and are the divine heritage of everyone in this country. I know that success, prosperity, and happiness are now operating in the affairs of every individual in this country. I know that divine guidance enlightens the collective mind of the people of this country. The all-knowing mind contains the answer to every challenge which confronts us. I know that every leader in this country is now directed by this all-knowing mind and has the knowledge of a complete solution to every problem. Each is compelled to act upon this knowledge to the end that abundance, security, and peace come to all. And I know that this spiritual democracy shall endure, guaranteeing to everyone in this country personal liberty, happiness, and self-expression. For this, I give thanks. And so it is.